Alright guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today. For this one, we are going to do another out and about video for you. So today, I am in Tokyo, and come to think of it, I think this is the very first time I've filmed an out and about video in Tokyo, despite having done quite a few of them here in Japan. But yeah, we are in the Mejiro area, and we're going to check out this place behind me, which is Inkhorn Brewing. These guys, in my experience, do some very nice IPAs, but I noticed on the tap list that they have a few other styles, so I'm quite curious to see what else they can do. But let's do as we always do with this one. We'll go in, we'll have a little look around, we'll try some of the beers. This place is very small, and it doesn't have food, so we will be focusing mainly on beer tasting in this particular out and about video. But yeah, very happy to visit these guys. This is a brewery I've been very curious about for quite some time actually, so let's do this. Alright guys, well, I'll just give you a little look around Inkhorn Brewing then. This place really is very small. This is your kind of typical Japanese standing bar actually. I've been filming my tastings just over here in the corner. But yeah, literally, yeah, this is the space here. You've got the bathroom just up there. You can actually see through to the brewery in the back, which is great. But then, yeah, you've got this lovely painting behind the bar here. So yeah, the story of Inkhorn Brewing. It's the company was founded by two people, Shun Nakade, who is Japanese, and his wife Amy Holdsworth, if I remember her name correctly. She is originally from Connecticut in the US, so she has a big passion for like bird conservation, so that's why pretty much all of the Inkhorn beers are named after birds and things like that. So yeah, basically the company started back in about 2020. At that time, Shun was kind of gypsy brewing a little bit. He was involved in another brewery a little bit before that, but then in 2021 he started. He actually got this place and started it up. So yeah, this space here was designed by Amy, and they opened this in 2021. But like I say, they're very well known for their IPAs in different places. But lovely little space. Let's get back to some beer tasting then. Let's do this. Alright guys, well, time for tasting number one then here at Inkhorn Brewing in Tokyo. So yeah, I noticed on the menu when I came in that they had a Pilsner, and that's obviously a style that this brewery isn't that known for. They're known mainly for the different IPAs, or at least that's my impression of them. But yeah, this one that we're going to have a look at, I think, could be very interesting. So this particular beer is called Flocking. It is the Mittelfrüh version, which I guess is a reference to the hops that are in here, but Mittelfrüh in German, of course, means like mid-spring. But yeah, this one comes in at 5% ABV, and they're describing it as an Italian Pilsner. So remember, the Pilsner as a style originated from the city of Pilsen in the mid-1800s. That was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, but the style was developed by a Bavarian brewer who came to the city. He was kind of kicked out a bit later on because he was a bit of an arsehole, but that beer became Pilsner Urquell, or Plzeňský Prazdroj, as it's known in the Czech Republic. So of course, that area is now part of the Czech Republic, has been since the formation of Czechoslovakia in 1918, if I remember, the reformation of Czechoslovakia, and then again it became, you know, the Czech Republic a little bit later on in the 90s. But yeah, anyway, an Italian Pilsner, the main thing about an Italian Pilsner is that it's slightly more kind of hoppy and slightly more bitter. But I haven't had too many Japanese brewed examples of this style. But yeah, when it came out, it had a nice half finger of a frothy, I would have said slightly cream white head. You can see lovely kind of pale golden straw colour there. Not too much in the way of visible carbonation with this one, but the appearance of this one is pretty much in line with what you would expect from the Italian Pilsner style, if you like. So yeah, I don't think there's anything else we really need to say about that. Just remember that the Pilsner is a lager beer, so it uses bottom fermenting yeast. They ferment at lower lower temperatures, like 8 to 12 degrees Celsius, of course. But yeah, I think that's all the technical things about the style and all the bits about the appearance of the beer that we need to say. So let's have a wee look at the nose of this one then and see how it turns out. Yeah. Straight away, this one smells, I'm going to say straight away, it smells really, really nice. This one is hopped with Middelfru and Diamant, and if I remember rightly, Diamant, it can add a little bit of fruitiness into the beer, like a little bit of a sort of lemony limey kind of character, slightly higher in its alpha acid and stuff like that as well, and you can smell a bit of that fruitiness right away. But I will say the aroma of this beer is giving you everything that you would expect of a Pilsner generally, and the Italian Pilsner, but a wee bit more fruitiness, I would say, compared to some others that I've had. But yeah, the backbone of this beer, lovely fresh white bready bread crust in there. You've got a little touch of woodiness to it, some nice cracker as well. A mix of like slightly sweet brown bread and kind of fluffier white bread too. Yeah, so fluffy white bread, as I say. Yeah, a little bit of the crackers coming out in this too. But yeah, a little bit of McVitie's digestive biscuity type character. It's a little bit sweet. Yeah, you've got that wee bit of sweetness in there. The yeasty character at the back of the nose is kind of quite white bready, I would say. Although there is a wee bit of a grainy brown bready note in there as well. And yeah, the hoppy side of this one is, as you'd expect too, very noble with German hops, so you get that lovely smooth earthiness, the little touch of herbal character, bright floral aromaticity, and some nice grassiness out of the beer as well. The fruity side of things, again, is what you would expect from that. There's like a little bit of a slightly peary note, yeah, a little bit of a sort of peary note out of it. Maybe some slight sultanas, bit of fresh green apple, but quite a bit of juicy lime in all honesty. I remember the Diamant gives you this slightly kind of limey character out of the beer. So yeah, aroma-wise, it's quite interesting, I have to say. So yeah, let's see what this one has in store for us. This one is the Flocking Mittelfru version, 5% ABV, an Italian Pilsner. First beer here at Inkhorn, a style I've never tried from these guys. So let's do it. Slange, skål, cheers, kampai. Oh, that's quite nice actually. Yeah, straight away it gives you this lovely, I'm not sure what that is in the background, I need to check in a minute, but yeah, it gives you this lovely, it's got a lovely kind of freshness and a lovely kind of bready, grainy sort of character to it. That's kind of what lingers there with this one. It's not the most bitter of Italian Pilsners that I've come across actually. And yeah, of course, in the north of Italy, there are, I'm pretty sure there's kind of hop regions up there as well actually. You've got Tyrol, of course, and has quite a bit of German influence. And, you know, they enjoy their beer up there for sure. But yeah, this one's definitely one of the more kind of malty and fruity leaning Italian Pilsners, I would say, that I've come across. But yeah, this one is very nice. I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink this again. So yeah, backbone of the beer, fresh white ready bread crust, little bit of wood, a little bit of cracker above that. Then you get a layer of like slightly sweet brown bread. Then there's a more fluffy wholemeal, so more of a wholemeal brown bread underneath. Then you get a layer of like a fluffy white bread in there, and above that you start to get the more, biscuity characters coming out of this one. So there's a wee bit of like a McVitie's digestive biscuity character in there. In the dead centre of your palate, you get that little oily biscuity circle. And yeah, the way that all of that goes together is really nice. Further back on the palate, of course, you start to get the Pilsner malt coming out of this one. So yeah, you've got that sort of slightly drier Pilsner malty character. Then at the back of the at the back of your palate with the yeasty side of things, it's quite nice too. Like, so the core of the yeasty character for me is quite, I would say that it's quite sort of, how would we say, it's quite kind of brown bready at its core, but then it's a bit more white bready after that. So yeah, brown bready at its core, white bready around it, and then a bit more of a kind of bread crusty type note around the edge there. And definitely, yeah, back third of your palate, the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, the way that that goes together, I think, is really nice. So hoppy side of the beer then. Back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, it's a wee bit more herbal, I would say. You do get quite a little bit of herbal character and almost a slight woodiness out of the hops in here. But yeah, as you move further forward from that, you've got some nice floral aromaticity, some zesty grassiness around the front curve of the tongue there. And yeah, the green component on this one is actually like quite oily, I would say. So yeah, it's quite interesting for sure. So fruity side of the beer, there's always say you get the fruity esters on that oily bubble just behind the kind of front, just behind the front tip of your tongue there. So for me, the fruity side of this beer, yeah, fruity side of this beer for me, at the back of your palate, or the back of that front third of your palate, it's got a wee bit of a more kind of pineapple-y type note. Yeah, it's got a little bit more of that kind of limey. There's a wee bit of just a citrusy, limey character there. As you move further forward from that, it's got a little bit more of a kind of sultana type quality, and as you reach the middle of that front third of your palate, it's a little bit more oily and peary, and then it becomes a wee bit more kind of limey as you reach the kind of front tip of your tongue, and that blends in with all the kind of grassy esters there on the very front tip of your tongue. So yeah, it's quite interesting in that regard. Quite a limey and oily leaning Pilsner, this one. It gets drier into the aftertaste. It shows you more of its Pilsner character further into the aftertaste. But yeah, all in all, I like this. I have to say, I do really like this. In terms of the mouthfeel then, I would say mouthfeel wise, this one, top end light bodied, the carbonation is very, very smooth. As you often get with Japanese beers, it's very clean and kind of light and drinkable. The IBU in this one, I think, is maybe about 30-ish. Yeah, so about 30-ish IBUs. It feels a bit more bitter into the aftertaste. You do get a little bit more of that kind of spicy floral character out of it, which is characteristic of the Italian Pilsner, I would say. So it shows you more of its Pilsner bitterness and things into the aftertaste. And then yeah, you've got that lovely little, yeah, you've got that lovely kind of oily, fruity character to it as well. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This one was the Flocking Mittelfrüh version, 5% Italian style Pilsner. Really impressed with this actually. I think this has been a really nice one to start off with. We've got a few other things on the menu there that I think could be very interesting. So we'll have a taste of those and see how we get on. And hopefully that noise behind us has stopped a wee bit later. I'll catch you guys in just a second. Cheers. Alright guys, so yeah, just behind me you can see the tap list written on the window here. So they've got 7 or 8 beers on tap and you can see into the little brewery behind. But yeah, we're here on the 28th of January 2025 and these are the beers that they have on tap today. So yeah, they have the Flocking Mittelfrüh version, an Italian Pilsner. Over here they have the Strange the Wise, an Imperial Stout, which I think has Mexican vanilla in it. That should be quite interesting to try. The Janubok, which is an Inkhorn Brewing collaboration with Saikad Brewing. Not sure where they're from actually. The Bucho 2025, a West Coast IPA. The Kestrel number 2, which is an American Pale. Topo Toucan, which is a hazy double IPA. The Mejiro hazy IPA, 2024 edition. Kibashiri, which is another Saikad one, an American IPA. Phantom Orange, which is a fruited sour. And then here they have a guest beer from Den Herberg, a lambic beer. So yeah, quite a nice little tap list actually, and as I say, cool to see it written on the windows. But yeah, let's choose our second beer then. Alright guys, well, time for tasting number 2 then here at Inkhorn. So yeah, the next beer that we're going to have a little look at goes to the IPA part of the beer spectrum, which is of course what I know this brewery for. So yeah, they had 2 West Coast IPAs on tap, so I asked the girl behind the bar which one was her favourite. So she chose this one for me, and this is very, very fresh, so where better to drink it than at source and at the very fresh time. So yeah, this particular beer is called Buncho West Coast IPA. It's filled to the rim, so I'm trying to be careful with this. 7% ABV. This one is hopped with Mosaic and Strata. We know both of these hops quite well. Both American. Mosaic is about 14% alpha, I think Strata is slightly more at 16. But yeah, Mosaic is going to give you a slightly earthy note, but a lot of tangerine orange, whereas Strata is going to give you a very big kind of strawberry type character. So a bit of melon as well from what I remember too. But appearance-wise, you can see that this one's a lovely kind of bright golden straw colour. This one, remember, West Coast IPAs, I would always say, can lean to they can lean 2 different ways. They can be a bit more bready and biscuity, such as Pliny the Elder from Russian River Brewing over in California, or they can be a little bit more oily and caramelly, such as the Sierra Nevada Torpedo. So that's worth bearing in mind. This one, just going by the colour, is absolutely going to be more of a kind of bready and biscuity one, and it's also got 2 different types of Pilsner malt in it. So yeah, that's quite obvious with this one. But yeah, appearance-wise, it looks good. There wasn't much head on this one when it poured, so yeah, that was kind of interesting. Didn't give you too much, but there's just a little bit of visible carbonation in this beer as well. So yeah, let's have a little, appearance-wise, nothing untoward about this one. We have seen West Coast IPAs that are this light before, so let's have a look at the aroma and see what we get. Oh yeah, straight away, big. Oh, I'm dropping bits of it. She filled it just a little bit too much. Straight away with this one, big oily fruity character. It smells lovely. The backbone of this, it's giving you that kind of slightly more oily maltiness, the big green component, and the lovely oily fruity notes as well. So yeah, the malty backbone of this one, you've got lovely kind of fresh white bready bread crust in there. You have a little touch of woody character, as you often get, cracker, little tiny touch of brown bread, but mostly like a fluffy fresh white bread. Wee bit of McVitie's digestive biscuit, and there is a little bit of straight up caramel in there, but it's that kind of like boozy, biscuity, yeah, it's that kind of oily, boozy, biscuity sort of thing. So yeah, the way that goes together, I think, is really nice. The malty character in this one is kind of what I was expecting when I saw the colour of it, and especially since I saw that it's got Pilsner malt in it as well. So yeah, yeasty side of this one, leaning more toward that white bready end of the spectrum for sure, but there is an element of like cracker and kind of brown bready character also. Yeah, a little bit sort of bread crust, yeah, a little bit of bread crust, some brown bread and some white bread, but mostly leaning towards that kind of white bready end of the spectrum. I'm just dropping this all over the place. So yeah, hoppy side of things with this one then. For me, hoppy side of the beer, the green component is quite oily. There is Mosaic Cryo in this one, so that kind of explains that. But yeah, it has got a little touch of earthiness in there, some nice bright floral aromaticity, and again, it's very, very oily, but yeah, you've got some zesty grassiness, and yeah, you've got some really nice kind of fruity character in this one as well, as I say. So yeah, I'm getting the kind of melony note from the Strata, also that juicy strawberry, and in honesty, I think those actually push back a little bit on the Mosaic in this one, because the beer, to me, it doesn't come across as being overly orangey. You do get that tangerine orange in there, but yeah, it's not overly dominant, if you like. So yeah, the way that goes together, I think, is really nice in this one. Yeah, It's quite interesting actually. So yeah, quite an oily West Coast IPA, this one. I have to say that about it, but yeah, the more that you smell of it, the more of the green component you get. So yeah, remember with IPAs there are 3 types of hoppings. Early addition hopping, which takes place within the first hour of the wort boil, that gives you mainly bitterness, and it gives you a deeper, danker green component. You've got yeah, late addition hopping, which takes place within the latter half hour of the wort boil. It gives you a little bit of bitterness, but mainly flavour and aroma. It gives you a very bright green component. Dry hopping takes place after the wort boil is complete, and that's all about flavour and aroma. And it gives you a very bright green component as well. So yeah, for me, this one, I think there's a bit of early addition hopping here. And West Coast IPAs, remember, tend to use all 3 types of hopping, which is why they're, you know, deeper, danker, and more kind of oily. But yeah, this one, it's quite. Yeah, I would say that this one is quite. Yeah, it's really quite oily. The green component comes out, but yeah, the use of the incognito hop in here, that definitely gives you more of it absolutely gives you more of a kind of oily character to it, but it's lovely. It really is very, very nice. Yeah, I like that about this one for sure. So, I think we've said everything we need to about the aroma of this one. Let's just have a try of this then. So, this one is called Buncho. It's the 2025 edition, 7% West Coast IPA. I love this style from Inkhorn, so really cool to try this one. Kampai. Yeah, it's really nice. And I wouldn't have expected anything less. So it's a very smooth, slightly oily West Coast IPA, this one, which again is what you would expect. So yeah, it shows you more of its bitterness into the aftertaste. It's one thing I do find with Japanese beers. Quite often they come in and they're quite mild in their impact flavours, but they really show their true colours more into the aftertaste. And this beer absolutely does that. It does show you that bitterness that you want from a West Coast IPA into its aftertaste. So yeah, backbone of this beer then, middle third of your palate, you've got that nice little bit of, like, I would say more of a brown bready bread crust. And further forward on the palate, you definitely get that very slight woody character coming out of this one. Some cracker in there too. A bit of like wholemeal, yeah, and then you've got the layer of like wholemeal brown bread in there, which is interesting because it's Pilsner malt in this one, and normally you'd associate that with white bread. So yeah, there's a slight layer of like brown bread in there, then there's a fluffier white bread, and above that you get like a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing coming out of this one. In the dead centre of your palate you can feel that oily circle there, where you've got some, it's, I don't know if I'd quite go as far as saying that it's sweet caramel, but it's like that kind of concentrated, slightly boozy, biscuity character that you get out of this one. So that's really nice as well. So yeah, I really do like that about this one as well. Yeah, don't know if there's much else to say about the middle third of your palate with this one. So on to the back third of your palate then. You get a really nice, you can feel the yeastiness in there. So at its core it's like a brown bready yeast, and as you move further out it's more white bready and slightly more kind of bread crusty almost. So yeah, that's good. And yeah, as I say, back third of your palate flavour is taller, and then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue it just condenses down a wee bit. So yeah, the yeastiness lingers there into the aftertaste, and you do get a wee bit of that dryness that you would always associate with Pilsner malt. That's really coming out in this one too. But yeah, in terms of the hoppy side of things for this one, the green component, back corners of the palate, there's a definite earthiness to this one, and that's Mosaic. Mosaic is going to give you that all day long. As you move further forward along the sides of your palate, it's got a little bit more of it's got a little bit more of a slightly woody and herbally sort of note. Then as you push further forward from that, it's got a bit more kind of floral aromaticity, and it's kind of slightly spicy as well, actually, I would say. But yeah, you can, round the front curve of your palate, you definitely get that more zesty, kind of grassy character, and you can feel the sort of oiliness coming out of this beer as well in that regard. So yeah, some interesting stuff going on with this one, I have to say. The green component, this one, it really does build its bitterness into the aftertaste, and that's a really, really nice thing about this beer. It does show you that proper West Coast IPA type character. So the fruity side of things is pretty much as I was expecting from the aroma. At the back of that front third of your palate, you've got a nice little bit of melon there, that stronger melon note, maybe a very slight touch of grapefruit as well. But as you move further forward from that into the front half of that front third of your palate, it's a little bit more, you can feel the kind of you can feel the sort of tangerine orange from the mosaic underneath, and it takes a wee bit of time for it to show its face almost. But then on top of that, you're getting the juicier kind of strawberry notes out of this one, which you'd expect from the Strata. So yeah, all in all, it's a really, really nice West Coast IPA. This one definitely more bready and biscuity, like I said, and then it's got that lovely oily fruity character too. So really well done beer, this one. But I know this style from this brewery, I wouldn't have expected any less, but again, cool to try it at source. Mouthfeel wise then, it's mid-bodied, maybe pushing top end of mid-bodied actually. The carbonation is very, very smooth. It's got a lovely oily slickness to it as well, which you want from this style. The IBU I think has got to be about 70 or 80. It doesn't feel like it's going to blow the head off you, but it does feel like it's maybe 70 or 80 IBUs. The malt base is a bit drier underneath, smoother in the middle, and a very slight sweetness on top. And then yeah, you've got that lovely kind of fruity characters, the lovely oily fruity characters just coming out of this one. As well, the orangey tangerine notes. I love orangey leaning West Coast IPAs, so this one kind of hits the spot for me. So yeah, big thumbs up to Inkhorn Brewing once again. Solid West Coast IPA, but I wouldn't expect anything less. Let's leave it at that for this one and see what else I've got. Kampai. Alright guys, well, just down to the right of where I was filming the tastings, they've got a few cans that you can take away actually. I thought there would have been a slightly bigger variety, but maybe they've just sold most of them. But yeah, the three that they have are the Toko Tuken Hazy Double IPA, 1,000 yen for a big double IPA cans, pretty good I would say. The Yanu Bock Heller Doppelbock, 8% ABV. And then yeah, they have this one, Strange the Wise, an Imperial Stout with Mexican vanilla for 1,100. See, this is one of the really strange things, I guess, in Japan with beer. So if you look at this, the price of this double IPA at 8% is only 1,000 yen, but then over here they've got the big Imperial Stout at 10%, which is only 100 yen more. So yeah, the pricing for beer in Japan is quite different compared to other countries. But you can see they've got a bunch of them in the fridge there. But yeah, you can get stuff to take away, and I'm guessing this will change pretty regularly. Right guys, well, time for tasting number 3 then here at Inkhorn Brewing. So yeah, I decided to change the angle up a little bit because I'm the only one in the bar at the moment, and yeah, they were cool with me filming, but of course in Japan, like, it's a bit of a cultural taboo to be kind of seen drinking beer outside, even though they do it pretty much all the time. That's just kind of how it is. But yeah, beer number 3 is one that I think will be very, very interesting. So it's a style I don't think I've had from a German brewery before, and it's a style that you really do not come across all that often anywhere outside of Germany, I guess. So yeah, the third beer that we're going to have a little look at is called Yanu Bock. So it comes in at 8% ABV, and they're calling this one a Heller Doppelbock. So yeah, remember that the Bock family of beers, they originate from a city called Einbeck in Germany. When the Einbeckers took their beers down to Munich, the Münchners made fun of the Einbeckers because the way they said like Bock beer to them sounded like goat. So that is why many of the Doppelbocks that you find have little goat symbols on them. It's just a joke that the Münchners made about the Einbeckers. But yeah, like I say, these are lager beers, so
Low temperature fermentation, bottom fermenting yeast. The Heller Doppelbock is, basically a strong bock lager, but it's blonde, as the name like Hellas would suggest. So, I think the R in German makes it possessive, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm remembering my German correctly. It's been a long time. But as you can see, and as you would expect from this one, it's poured with this lovely kind of rich, yellowy, very slightly amber colour. When the beer poured, it had about a half finger of a frothy, kind of cream coloured head, but that has faded away to just be a very kind of thin, foamy layer at the moment. So all in all, nothing surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance when you consider what style it is. Like I say, ambulance on its way past. Like I said, there's nothing overly surprising about this beer in its appearance when you consider what style it is. So let's have a little look at the aroma of this one then and see how we go. As I say, very curious to try this one. This may well be the first ever Japanese brewed example of this style that I'm going to try, so that's pretty cool as well. Oh yeah, okay. First impression, pretty sweet, but it smells like authentically German. And as I always say, what I look for with these kind of German styles is authenticity. I want these to taste as they would in Germany or, the Czech Republic or Austria, if we're talking about lagers generally. And this one smells really, really nice. Backbone of the beer is a lovely, very fresh, kind of white bready bread crust. You have a little touch of woodiness in there. Little touch of woodiness. Quite a little bit of Jacob's cream cracker in this one, but you have that typical German malt character there, and just like, where's my hand? Just like down over there, where I'm pointing, they've got a bunch of malt bags kind of sitting on the floor there, and some of them are from quite famous German malteries. I'll show you that at some point in the video. But the backbone of this beer, fresh white bread crust, a little bit of wood, a little bit of cracker, lots of fluffy, kind of fresh white bread in this one. On top of that, you get a little bit of that kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing as well. There is quite a little bit of straight up caramel in this one, but it does have that sort of like concentrated McVitie's digestive biscuit sort of character to it as well. So but very authentically German. That's what I love about these things. I miss living in Germany and enjoying all these beers for so cheap. Aroma wise, this is really, really quite nice. So on the I think that's everything we need to say about the malty side of it. On the yeasty side of things, at the back of the nose, you're getting a lovely kind of very sweet, kind of fluffy white bread. That's definitely present in this one, and again, I think it's really, really nice. Big fluffy, fresh white bread. I would say there's maybe a little touch of like sweet brown bread, and almost a very slight banana bread to the yeasty character, but not overly much. And then your hoppy side of things is very German and noble in this one. Again, they use Diamant in this one as well, which I think has given the beer a slightly limey kind of character again, actually. So for me, you've got that typical smooth German noble earthiness in there. You've got a little bit of a kind of herbal character as well. A little bit of floral aromaticity, and a wee bit of a kind of smooth grassiness in there, but again, very typical noble. And the fact that you've got that big, obviously German malt base in the aroma here as well is quite nice. The fruity side of this one's quite similar to what we had with the Italian Pilsner, to be honest with you. It's like sultanas, dry white green grapes, pear, a little bit of dry apricot in there, and then like a wee touch of like gooseberry and a slightly limey kind of note in this one. So the way that this goes together, I think, is really, really nice. Aroma-wise, I really like this. So I don't think there's anything else we need to say about this one, aroma-wise. Let's have a taste of it and see what it's all about. So this is the Janu Bock, an 8% Heller Doppelbock. our third beer here at Inkhorn Brewing, and a style again that I have not tried from these guys. Kampai. Ooh, that's nice. Very smooth and very bready, actually. Has some kind of Märzen character to it as well. The Märzen, the Märzen is a beer that's similar in its flavour profile. Obviously not quite as strong, but the Bock beers always tend to be a bit more bready than anything else. So yeah, that's the big thing I'm noticing here. A lot of bready backbone to this one. Not the most complex of beers, but again, really nicely done. And in terms of authenticity, it's pretty much spot on. So yeah, well done to the guys at Inkhorn for this. This is good. Yeah. So very happy with this. Where to start then? The backbone of the beer is, of course, that fresh white bready bread crust in there. As you move further forward on the tongue, of course, you get that typical little bit of woodiness. There's a wee bit of like a crackery note out of this one into the aftertaste. There's a tiny little layer, a very thin layer of like a wholemeal brown bread. But yeah, the malty backbone of this one is a very big, smooth German white bread. I miss the German bakery as something rotten, in all honesty. I miss having the German bread on the weekends. But this would make up for it when I do eventually live here in Japan. So yeah, lovely big kind of fluffy and smooth white bready character coming out of this one. Yeah, and on top of that bready layer, on top of the bready layer, you start to get a little bit of that McVitie's digestive biscuit. You know, it's like quite a crispy biscuit, but in the dead centre of your palate, you've got a more oily, sweet, caramelly note out of this one. So yeah, lovely sweet oily caramel, some McVitie's digestive biscuit in there too. And yeah, again, it's very typical German, this beer, but it's very, very well done. On the back third of your palate, you start to get the yeasty side of things coming out of this one. So yeah, the yeasty side of this one in the back, of your palate there, it's got like a little bit of a brown bready character at its core, but then it's more white bready around the edge. I think that's absolutely fair to say. And then yeah, around to the very edge of that, it's like a white bready bread crust. Absolutely. So yeah, yeasty and malty side of this one is very nice and very, very German, of course. The hoppy side of the beer, back corners of the palate, you've got a very slight earthiness to this one. Little touch of woodiness as well, and a wee bit of herbal character as you come further forward. But yeah, as you move toward the kind of front corners of your palate, the beer's got a lovely little bit of floral aromaticity there, some lighter grassiness around the edge of the tongue, but it's quite an oily and smooth green component that you get in here. But yeah, on top of that, you've got some really nice fruitiness. So as I say, that fruity bubble at the front, on the front third of your palate, that comes out really nicely in here. So yeah, for me, the fruity side of this beer again is kind of what we had with the Italian Pilsner, in all honesty. So yeah, fruity side of the beer for me. At the back, it's a little bit more, it's got a little bit more of a kind of sort of sultana type quality to it. So yeah, that's in there. A little bit of like, definitely a little bit of a kind of sultana, like dried white, green, grapey sort of notes there. As you move further forward, it's more oily and peary. There's a little bit of apricot as you reach the kind of front half of that front third of your tongue. Or as you reach the middle of that front third of your tongue, of course. And then yeah, into the front half of the front third of your tongue. The oily pear kind of lingers there, but you do have a little touch of a limey character, which I think is the diamant, just behind the very kind of front tip of your tongue. Maybe very slightly gooseberry and melony as well, actually. But then yeah, that's when it starts mixing in with all the kind of grassy esters actually. So yeah, all in all, fruity side of this one I think is quite nice as well. Mouthfeel wise then, just to round this one off, for me, this beer, it's kind of mid-bodied, pushing top end of mid-bodied actually. Carbonation is very, very smooth. It's got a lovely sort of slick, slightly oily mouthfeel to it. But yeah, the way that goes together I think is really, really nice. Bit of dryness out of the malt, bit of smoothness in there as well, and a wee touch of sweetness, and then yeah, nice oily fruity character. All in all, a nice Heller Doppelbock. This is not the most complex style of beer that you'll come across, and you don't find them all that often. So maybe the fact that they're, you know, I would always pick the regular kind of Doppelbock over a Hellerbock. The other one that you get is a Maibock, which is a bit more biscuity than this. So yeah, it's not that common a style to find. But yeah, quite interesting to try one for the first time in quite a wee while actually. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one, and we'll see how we go. So yeah, I think another 2 beers here. There's another 2 on the menu that are quite interesting me. So leave it at that for this one, and I'll catch you guys in a second with something else. Cheers. Alright guys, well, time for tasting number 4 then here at Inkhorn Brewing in Meijiro in Tokyo. So yeah, for this one, I thought we would go to one of Inkhorn's kind of signature styles, if you like, and this is a beer that I've seen from these guys quite a few times, so I'm not sure whether this could be considered one of their kind of core beers. We'll just need to see. But yeah, this one is called Toko Tukan. It comes in at 8% ABV, and this one is a New England Hazy, Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, this one is hopped with Motueka, Citra, Simcoe, and Mosaic as well. So yeah, a good variety of hops in there, 3 American and 1 New Zealand. So Motueka is the New Zealand one, 8% alpha acid. It gives you that lovely kind of juicy, limey kind of character. Citra is 40, all of the other ones I think are 14% alpha acid except Simcoe, which is 12. But yeah, Citra is going to give you a little touch of grapefruit, lovely juicy mango, and a few other tropical fruit complexities. Simcoe is going to give you a very soft kind of passion fruity type note, and Mosaic is going to give you that wee bit of earthiness but a nice little bit of orangey, tangerine type character. So yeah, let's have a little look at the nose on this one in a second and see. But yeah, the appearance of this one is like a very bright kind of mango juice type colour. Remember, the colour of your beer depends on, like I said before, the type of malts that you use. But in a hazy IPA, the level of haze depends on the oak content, wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you use. On the subject of yeast, we should also point out that this brewery are using a house yeast in this one, so it will be quite unique in that regard. But in terms of the New England Hazy IPA, this one is not the soupiest and gloopiest I've seen at 8% ABV, but it is, you know, it's kind of what you would expect in that particular regard. But yeah, let's go on to the aroma then and see what we have here. I'm very, very curious about this. So yeah, as I've said before, for me there are 6 elements to think about when it comes to New England Hazy IPAs. So for me, you've got the kind of farmhousey, yeasty type character and the rye lean and grainy side of things. Those are a bit more common in New England brewed New England IPAs. As the style has evolved and moved to other places, the focus has been more on like oaty creaminess, barley malt bread, wheaty bitiness, and the sweeter side of things. This one to me comes across as being very well balanced in the sort of barley malt bread, the oat and the wheat, but it's more oaty and barley malt leaning, I would say. So very smooth malt base, that's for sure. So the backbone of this beer, the aroma, fresh white bready bread crust, little bit of kind of woody note to it, some nice crackery elements too, but yeah, lovely fluffy fresh white bread in there. You can smell that more dense wheaty white bread in this as well. And it's not, the wheat in this is very, very smooth, which makes me think it's either American or Australian wheat rather than German or European wheat, because German European wheat is just that little bit bitier. The oaty side of things is quite interesting in this one as well, because it's quite smooth and creamy, but it also has that little bit more dryness to it, and that makes me wonder if it's Australian oats. European oats are very, very creamy, American oats are slightly porridgey, but the slight dryness that you get out of the oats here makes me think more Australian oats, and I'd love to see that. They've got a bunch of German malt just sitting over there, like I said, but that's barley, of course. I don't know about the wheat and the oats. But yeah, oats, of course, in New England IPAs are a relatively good indicator of how fresh your beer is. Essentially, the fresher the beer is, the more creamy the oats are, but the drier they are, the older it is. But with this one, it's at source, it's bound to be pretty fresh, a few weeks old at most. But yeah, there's a little touch of sweetness to this one, a little bit of Werther's Original, butter candy, butterscotch, a wee bit of biscuit as well. But yeah, the malt base is very oaty and very barley malt leaning, that's for sure. The yeasty side of things with this one, quite white bready, I would say. Little touch of brown bread and a little bit of cracker in there. The hoppy side of your beer, there's a few incognito and cryo things in here as well, I should point out, so the green component is very, very smooth. But yeah, there's that little bit of earthiness in there from the mosaic. You've got some nice floral aromaticity as well, and a good little bit of zesty grassiness. And if you know these hops, the fruit that you're getting out of this one should be very, very familiar. Lovely little bit of peachy sharpness on the top of the nose, big juicy mango, softer passion fruit underneath, apricots, pineapples. The passion fruit's going to come from the Simcoe, of course, everything else is going to be the Citra. And at the front of the nose, it's all about the juicy lime from the Motueka and the kind of more oily tangerine orange from the Mosaic. So yeah, that is a very, very nice aroma that you're getting out of this one. I actually can't remember if I've tried this one for a sit-down review, but regardless, as I say, it's one of their kind of regular beers from what I can gather. So yeah, I think it's very nice to try it at source. So let's have a taste of this one then and see what it's all about. Sláinte, skål, cheers, kampai. Ooh, that's really good. Again, as you often get with Japanese beers, it's very light and it's very drinkable, but it gives you this beautiful flavour into the aftertaste. Japanese beers, as I've repeated many a time, the impact flavours are quite mild in a way, but then they show you everything into the aftertaste. That's a lovely, lovely New England double IPA, this one. And I'll tell you something too, it's dangerously drinkable. It hides its alcohol really, really well. Yeah, you could easily down a few of these and go outside and the pavement starts moving without you realising what's happened. That would be very easy with this beer. But yeah, very bready, oaty leaning New England IPA, as I said. Yeah, great, great stuff. So thumbs up to Inkhorn Brewing. This is what made this brewery so well known, I guess you could say, in this kind of beer. The West Coast IPA is good as well, but yeah, the hazy IPAs are really what made this brewery so well known. But yeah, let's break the flavour down and describe it more in depth, as we always do. So, backbone of the beer, you have that lovely, fresh, white bready bread crust in there. A little bit further forward, you have a slightly more woody flavour. Above that, there's some kind of Jacob's cream cracker in there. There's a little layer of kind of brown bread in there, and then you get the fluffier white bread, of course, from the barley malt. And yeah, it's above that you get a more dense, wheaty white bread. But this beer really isn't all that wheaty leaning, I would say, and that's maybe one of the reasons for its kind of smoothness and lightness in the mouthfeel. But yeah. Above that you get the oaty kind of notes, so down the middle line of your tongue you get the nice kind of creamy oats, and as you push out toward the edge of the palate there, you get that little bit of a more dry kind of note out of it, and then yeah, in the dead centre of your palate you can feel that little circle there where you've got the Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of note coming out of it, and it really is very, very nice. There's a wee bit of biscuit surrounding that as well, like a McVitie's digestive biscuit. So yeah, a little bit of sweetness in the dead centre of your palate. That's the alcohol, of course. Then yeah, more of a biscuity character just surrounding that. Yeah, malt base in this one, beautifully, beautifully done. At the back of that, at the back of your palate there, you start to get the yeasty notes out of this one, and this is where it's interesting because, like I say, they're using a house yeast in this beer apparently. So yeah, the yeasty side of the beer for me, at its core, it has like a slightly sweeter, white bready note to it. Around the edge, maybe a slightly more brown bready note, and then some nice kind of fresh bread crusty character in there as well. And yeah, the yeastiness kind of lingers into the aftertaste a wee bit. You get a wee bit of the cracker and other stuff coming out of this one as well. But yeah, I like that about this one. The yeasty malty side of this beer is really nicely done. Hoppy side of the beer then. Back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little touch of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, it's a little bit herbal, of course, but as you push toward the kind of front corners of your palate, more floral and aromatic, and round the front curve of the tongue, definitely lighter and grassy. But that green component is very smooth and very oily, actually. So yeah, that's something I do really quite like about this as well. The green component is really nice. It's a very smooth beer, this one, but a little bit drier into the aftertaste. Let's look at that fruity side of things then. As I always say, the fruity side of the beer comes out in that oily bubble on the front third of your palate there. So let's look. So yeah, for me, at the back of that front third of your palate, you get a little touch of peachiness on the top there. Then underneath that, you can feel the big juicy mango, and in the base of the back half of that front third of your palate, you get like a kind of, there's quite a lot of apricot for me, so a lot of dried apricot. So yeah, peach, juicy mango, in fact so maybe peach, passion fruit, apricot underneath, and the juicy mango a little bit further forward, and then there's a wee bit of pineapple in there. But yeah, as you go into the front half of that front third of your palate, it's absolutely more about those fruits. The passion fruits coming mainly from the Simcoe, everything else is from the Citra. But then yeah, as you move into the front half of that front third of your tongue, it's the the Motueka and the Mosaic that are coming out. So you can feel the oily tangerine orange in the base from the Mosaic for sure. And then on top of that, you get that slightly more juicy and kind of pungent lime out of this one. So that really sits there. Yeah, the way that goes together on this one, I think, the way that everything pieces together here is very, very nice. The fruit, this is a great New England double IPA. This one is a flagship beer, if that is what they're kind of calling it as, I'm assuming, in this case. But this is a really, really nice one, and it would be a very good introduction to Inkhorn Brewing, that's for sure. Let's round off with a wee look at the mouthfeel for this one then. So, as you'd expect with this one, as is the case with a lot of Japanese beers, it's very light and very drinkable, very clean. Mouthfeel wise, I'd say it's kind of mid-bodied, maybe pushing top end of mid-bodied, very smooth carbonation. Again, you taste the water quality in this. 30 to 40 IBUs, roughly. I want to say 30 because it's very smooth, and of course you've got the Cryo and Incognito in here. Malt base is a bit drier underneath, smoother in the middle, slightly sweet and creamy on top, and then yeah, you've got that lovely, juicy, slightly oily, fruity character out of this one. Beautiful New England double IPA. This one, very cool to try at source. And like I say, this is one that I've seen from Inkhorn quite a bit, so probably, if you know, these guys are a very small operation now, but this is probably one of the beers that they will start doing on the bigger scale at some stage, I'm sure, when they move or whatever. So yeah, I think that's a nice way to round off this one. There's one more beer on the menu that I really want to try, so this will have been our penultimate tasting. Toko Toucan, 8% ABV, New England Hazy, Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. Kampai just now. Alright guys, just a very short kind of cutscene for you here. If you want, you can get your Inkhorn Brewing t-shirts here. And I have to say, the designs are very nice. So there you go. Let's get on to the next beer. Cheers. Alright guys, well, time for our fifth and final tasting then here at Inkhorn Brewing in Mejiro in Tokyo. So yeah, for this last one, we are going for the biggest, boldest, darkest thing on the menu, as we often do in these videos. And I have to say, this is one that I'm very, very curious about actually. So this particular beer is called Strange the Wise. It comes in at 10% ABV, and this one is an imperial stout with Mexican vanilla added into it. So yeah, I love the big kind of smooth imperial stouts. I think this one should be really interesting. I'm just going to let you as well see the artwork on the glass here, because I think the other beers were a bit too light to really let you see it properly, whereas this one is dark enough that you can actually see it there, as long as I don't spill a lot of the beer over my microphone, which is obviously a very good idea. But yeah, you can see the artwork on these little glasses that I've been having is very, very nice. But yeah, like I said, it's a 10% imperial stout, this one. Quite an interesting malt base in this, Maris Otter, a type of red malt that I've never come across, and yeah, chocolate and carafa in this one, so English, German and some other malts in here as well. But yeah, as you would expect from the imperial stout style category, it pours a lovely sort of dark ebony rosewood kind of colour. When it came out, it had about a half finger of a frothy, I would have said kind of fawn medium tan coloured head. There's not much in the way of visible carbonation with this one, and when I shine the light through it, it does have a little bit of that kind of Coca-Cola Pepsi coloured edge to it. So yeah, nothing really surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance when you consider what style it is. So yeah, I think it should be really quite interesting. So let's have a wee look at the nose of this one then and see what it's all about. Like I say, very curious about this. Yeah. It's a really interesting one, this. It's actually very mild in terms of its aroma. I get the feeling that this is going to be one of these imperial stouts that we get more out of the flavour, a lot more out of the flavour than we do from the aroma. So yeah, in the backbone, it's got a little bit more of in the backbone, yeah, it has a little bit more of a sort of kind of rye bready bread crust, slightly toasty, not overly well fired, but yeah, slightly roasty toasty, rye bready bread crust. There's a wee bit of like a drier rye bread in there and a kind of wholemeal brown bread. There's a wee touch of like toasty cacao nibby chocolate. It's not overly oily and sweet, it's more like a cacao nib rather than anything else. Or cocoa nib, should we say? My English is terrible these days. But yeah, above that, you get a little bit of toasty brown sugar, a slightly more leathery brown sugar, and yeah, like the whole vibe of this beer is actually pretty dry and bready, to be honest with you. When it comes to imperial stouts, there's a few ways to play with these. I mean, you can do a double mash, which is going to give you a very big, thick, sort of sticky mouthfeel. You can do a longer wort boil, which is going to give you quite a lot of complexity, but it's also going to make the beer that little bit drier, I would say. And you can also, do things with adjuncts and barrel aging and stuff like that as well. So maybe 3 or 4 ways to play with this style depending on how you view it. But yeah, this one for me is actually a very dry imperial stout, and it's almost slightly bordering on the kind of pastry stout in terms of its aroma. And as I've told you on the channel many times before, I'm not the biggest fan of pastry stouts. I don't like the kind of granola and kind of marzipan-y sort of aroma and flavour that these things can sometimes have. So this one doesn't have too much of that, but there's a little bit of a sign here that makes me wonder, am I going to enjoy this? The kind of vanilla comes across as having a little bit of a marzipan-y note to it. So you get the vanilla in the top of the nose here, but in fairness, the vanilla comes across as quite candied and marzipan-y almost in a way. But the rest of the beer kind of comes across as being kind of typical old school RIS. The yeasty side of this one, it's a little bit like kind of rye bready, wholemeal brown bready. There's a little hint of that almost like highly roasted coffee bean out of it, and a bit of a toasty bread crust. But yeah, not too much coming out of it in that regard otherwise. I think that maybe a little bit of nuttiness. There's a little bit of woodiness and nuttiness come out of this beer into the aftertaste. Otherwise, I think we need to focus on the hoppy and fruity side of things to round off the aroma. So for me, as always say, the Imperial Stout is not the most hop forward of styles. This one does have a little bit of earthiness to it, a little touch of woody and kind of herbal character, but yeah, wee bit of floral note, some grassy character as well. These are all things that you would expect of the style. On the fruity side of things, it's quite like... it leans, there's a little bit of like plum in there, but more like pruny. It's kind of dry rather than anything else. There's fig in there. There's plum, there's prune, there's fig. There's a little bit of blackberry and blackcurrant. These are all things that you would expect of this style, I would say. But yeah, it doesn't come across as too RIS. It comes across as more like a slightly dry pastry stout, in all honesty. So it makes me quite curious to see what this one's all about. But let's just have a taste and see how this one turns out actually. So this is called Strange the Wise, a 10% Imperial Stout with Mexican vanilla in it. Our last beer here at Inkhorn Brewing in Mejiro in Tokyo. So let's do this. Slange, skål, cheers, kampai. Yeah, I'm going to say straight away, this one tastes a lot better than I thought it was going to from the aroma. It is more just like a very smooth RIS. I was worried that this one was going to be a bit too pastry stoutish, which, like I said, is just really not to my taste. But yeah, this one is really nice actually, but it does have a little bit of that cakey and rye bready sort of vibe to it, I have to say. So pardon me, what do we say about this? It's really nicely done actually. The Mexican vanilla really comes out into the aftertaste. So let's just break it down and describe it as we always do. So the backbone of the beer, roasty toasty, slightly well-fired bread crust in there. Further forward on the palate, you get a little bit of that kind of woody character coming out of this one. You do get a little touch of a crackery note in there. Above that, there's a wee touch of like a kind of sponge cake, like a sort of chocolate sponge cake type layer. And within the sponge cake, there's a little bit of within the sponge cake, you have a little bit of a kind of marzipan-y, nutty, Christmas puddingy sort of character going on. It's a little touch phenolic actually. But yeah, above that maybe underneath that kind of cakey layer, there's a slight layer of a more oily rye bready note coming out of that. So yeah, the rye bread is there, then you've got the sort of chocolate spongy layer I was talking about, and then above that you get this really quite charred, chocolatey layer coming out of this one. As I've often said, sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. So yeah, the chocolatey layer is a bit sweeter, maybe like 80 or 90% cocoa chocolate further forward, but it's really quite charred further back actually. I do get the impression that this beer is single mash. It doesn't feel overly sticky or anything like that, and I don't think it's had an overly long wort boil either. But above that sort of chocolatey layer, you get the toasty, well-fired bread crust, toasty, well-fired brown sugar. Then in the centre of the palate, you get that little circle there where it's kind of leathery brown sugar underneath. Then in the middle of the palate, you get that slightly more treacly, molassesy sort of thing. And that is, of course, the alcohol part of the beer just coming out there. And the brown sugar does linger into the aftertaste. The vanilla in this one actually comes across as quite, it mixes in with all these phenolic flavours, and you can really feel it into the aftertaste, that's for sure. Yeah. So, on the back third of your palate then, that is of course where the yeasty side of the beer comes out. So for me, the yeast at its core, the yeasty part of the beer at its core is like a kind of toasty, rye bready kind of character. Around the edge of that, you get a little bit more of a kind of chocolate spongy type note. So yeah, rye bready has its core, a more kind of chocolate spongy note around the edge, and then it's like a kind of well-fired like cake edge, you know, those bits of the cake that kind of stick to the edge of the baking tray. Maybe Chris, maybe you can describe that as English chocolate pudding. It's a wee bit like that. So all that yeasty character sits on the top of that back third of your palate, and there is maybe just a very slight toasty coffee bean sort of flavour to this one there as well. But I think that covers the malty and yeasty side of this beer in all honesty. Let's go to the hoppy side of things and the fruity side of the beer. So back corners of the palate, you've got a nice earthiness coming out of this one, and as you move further forward it's definitely more kind of woody, I would say, and very slightly herbal. I should point out as well, the hop in this one is actually mosaic, which is quite unusual in an imperial stout, I would say. But yeah, earthy, slightly woody and herbal, and that does linger into the aftertaste actually, and it comes quite far forward on the palate. You get a little bit of floral aromaticity there, then round the front curve of the tongue it's a wee bit lighter and more grassy, and it's slightly oily in that sense as well. So yeah, green component in this one is very interesting. You get more woodiness and earthiness out of this into the aftertaste. On the fruity side of things then, for me, the fruity side of this beer, it's quite it is quite you know, with mosaic you'd obviously expect big orangey characters, and some of that does shine through in this one. So that front third of your palate where you're getting the fruity side of things is it's quite orangey, but underneath that you get a little touch of like blackcurrant for sure, and there's a wee bit of a kind of almost pruny and datey sultana type character there. So yeah, prunes, dates, sultanas on, and slightly peary on that back half of the front third of your palate, and then as you move further forward it's got this slightly dry orangey kind of note to it as well. So yeah, this is, it's really nice in that particular regard. It's very interesting, this one. The woody and the earthy and the kind of orangey notes that this beer has make it really quite unique, and the vanilla, the way the vanilla comes out is really interesting as well. So yeah, a very unique imperial stout, this one. I think we can safely say that. Yeah, so to round off this one, in terms of the mouthfeel, for me, mid to bottom end of full bodied. Carbonation is very smooth. It's quite clean. It's quite slick in a way. The IBU in this one I think is about 70 or 80 IBUs. It's more dryness as well, so there could obviously be a bit of conflation between sort of dryness and toastiness and the IBU, but I want to say 70 or 80 IBUs with this beer. The malt base is a bit drier and roasty and toastier underneath, smoother in the middle, kind of dry and sweet and toasty on top, and then yeah, you've just got that little bit of fruitiness coming out of this as well. So all in all, it's a really interesting beer, this one. Quite a different imperial stout compared to a lot of the others I've had in recent times. And yeah, it's absolutely worth trying, and very good quality beer as you'd expect from Inkhorn. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. So this was The Strange, the Wise, a 10% imperial stout. So mainly like an old school RIS, but with a slight touch of pastry stout character to it. Our last beer here at Inkhorn Brewing in Mejiro in Tokyo. So I'll catch you guys in a little second with my final thoughts of my time here at Inkhorn Brewing. So hope you guys enjoyed this one. Kampe. Alright guys, well that is the end of my time then here at Inkhorn Brewing in Mejiro in Tokyo. So yeah, I had a really nice couple of hours here actually. I got to try 5 beers in total, some styles that I am quite familiar with when it comes to Inkhorn Brewing, the West Coast IPA and the New England Hazy IPA, but we also got to try an Italian Pilsner,
a Heller Doppelbock, and also an Imperial Stout. So all 5 beers were really, really quite nice. Of course, the IPAs are the ones that this brewery are famous for. Those were probably the standouts in all honesty. But yeah, really enjoyed it here. A proper Japanese standing type bar, if you like. In total, I paid, I think, about 4,500 yen for the 4 of my beers, so that's maybe like £22.50 sterling, roughly, about 25 euros, $27.50 American, yeah, like 225 Hong Kong dollars, like, oh, I don't know, about, yeah, 325 Swedish kroner, something like that. So yeah, all in all, a really nice time here at Inkhorn Brewing. The beer was really good quality. Actually, just as I was kind of packing up, Shun Nakade, one of the founders, popped out. He was in the brewery doing some stuff, and yeah, he popped out to say hello. A little bit of a shy guy actually, but very, very nice and very, very friendly. He didn't really want to kind of be on camera. I asked him if he wanted to do a tasting together, but he wasn't too keen on that idea. But yeah, really cool to come and visit these guys. As I say, this is one of the Japanese craft breweries that you really, really need to check out. So yeah, if you find yourself here in Tokyo, definitely take the little train trip out here to Mejiro and have a look at their beers. So yeah, big plaudits to Inkhorn Brewing. These guys are doing some really interesting stuff. Very, very small company, so do come out and check these guys out. But let's leave it at that for this one. Another really, really nice out and about video. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this, and I'll catch you guys very, very soon with another one. Ciao just now.